Hi, I'm your host, Nancy O'Neill, and welcome to Suncoast FYI. If you love gardening and flowers, this show is for you. Joining me is a professional garden artist, an expert on orchids, and the person you'll need to help you keep your plants happy and healthy. Let's welcome Sally Hellerick, garden artist extraordinaire. Sally is going to share valuable information about the landscape industry and the aspects of gardening through it, right? Mm-hmm. Okay. So what would you like folks to first know about you and your business, Sally?
Well, I'm a sole owner operator. I collaborate individually with each client, and I try to help them achieve a garden that they will love. Couple words that I use when I look at a landscape are what can I reuse, what can be renewed, what can be restored, and of course how much maintenance is involved. Okay. And then of course the other caveat is right plant, right place.
Right, and that's very important here in Florida. I mean,
exactly.
You may want to have, I don't know, wisterias. Can we grow wisteria here? No. And that's it. So it's kind of like we have to be conscious of where we are and what we can grow.
Correct.
And you direct your clients.
I direct and I help design and help them select the plants that will work in their gardens. A lot of times when you go into the garden center, you're overwhelmed. Your eye is just, I want to buy everything. Yep. And generally the garden centers do sell what's appropriate for our area. But sometimes they don't, and people are disappointed when they get the wrong thing.
So what are some of the concepts you would suggest to your clients when they're creating their space?
Well, I would suggest that you look at how you're going to use the space, what your interests are. Let's say you're interested in pollinators, seeing your birds and butterflies flying around your garden, whether you're interested in going native plants. If you decide not to go native plants, you can use Florida-friendly plants, which are generally derived from Florida native plants.
Okay. Now you brought some slides with you.
I
so
did.
I don't know if we're ready for those or not, but whenever you're ready to start, yeah.
All right. Well, this is a client's business, very small law office, and this was the landscape that I started with. Basically half of it was dead and it needed a punch up, and you can see that the house is kind of a pink color, so I tried to bring in the pinks into the landscape. Okay. So this is what it looks like afterwards.
Wow.
And I brought in the pinks and brought out the colors of the house. Also a low maintenance landscape. Now this particular place was a trial in irrigation, so that's another important thing in Florida. If you have irrigation on your property, just make sure that it's working correctly.
Sure.
I had sprinkler heads running into watering the air conditioning unit.
Oh my gosh.
So, and I had one area that wasn't even working.
Yeah.
So you just never know. This one, these folks were lovely folks. I did 3 areas of their property. This lanai needed help.
And you saved it.
And this is what I did. She liked the topiary. She liked more of a Mediterranean feel. I put her herbs in their pots, and then power washed the floor, and I did a garden on the outside.
Awesome.
And then this is what it looks like as it grew in a little bit more. And they were so excited that they bought new furniture.
That's what happens, right? You start with one thing, and then it's like you got to.
Now they enjoy bird watching in their backyard and watching the butterflies in the butterfly garden.
Beautiful.
So they're using their area. Okay. They also had a lovely fountain that I started up for them too. So we got the whole ball rolling. Now this was in their front yard, and this is what they inherited when they moved into the house, and everything basically is overgrown. Now when I look at this, I said, what can I reuse? You know, how can I reinvigorate this landscape?
Right.
So I did some very hard pruning, saved a lot of plants, and that's what it looks like after.
Okay.
You can
great.
actually see the pathway into the house. It's very welcoming. And they also have the butterfly garden in the front, which is what they wanted.
Delightful. Okay. So what has been the most rewarding aspect of your business? Because we're just about out of time again. It goes by so quickly.
Yes. Some of the rewarding aspects are using my creativity and problem solving,
Okay.
using artistry in the garden, all the wonderful people that I've met,
That's great.
all my clients.
That's great. Now, if our viewers want to get a hold of you, where can they find you, Sally?
Let's see, I have a Facebook, which is Gardens by SH.
Okay.
And I also have a little Instagram account that I run where I take photos in gardens and in a lot of my gardens. It's SRQ
Yeah.
Garden View.
Okay. Well, thank you.
yeah.
All right. Well, it was a pleasure having you. I hope you enjoyed being on today.
I did.
And I love my garden.
Perfect. Thank you, Nancy.
You're welcome. Marta Hudson from the Sarasota Orchid Society joins us next, so please stay with us. The Sarasota Orchid Society is a nonprofit dedicated to the education, appreciation, and enjoyment of many varieties of orchids. Orchids can be tricky to grow and maintain, but Marta Hudson, past president of the Sarasota Orchid Society, has the answers to all of those "what do I do" questions. Okay, so we had asked you earlier, how many orchids do you own, dear?
Well, what I told you earlier too is that what's happening at this studio stays at the studio.
Okay, well, I don't know if we can keep it that quiet, but
I have close to 1,000,
okay.
but I had to sadly throw away about 100 of them when we had the hurricane and then the cold weather.
Sure.
They were shredded to pieces, and I had to get rid of them.
Okay, well, but obviously you take very good care of them. So that's why you're here, because you're going to help us take care of our orchids. Okay.
Thank you.
What do you look for when you're buying an orchid? How should a person begin when they look at an orchid?
Well, the first thing to look at is the roots, if you can see them, the leaves, and if they're blooming, to look at the flowers. If you look at this plant, it has very healthy roots, very green. It's been
That's what you look for, is green roots.
well, they're green and they're like transparent kind of it. That means that they are healthy roots. They're not dark like this, for instance, an old root.
Okay.
So
So what do you do when you see something like that? Do you cut it off when you see the old roots?
yes, you could, but then you have to use the right tools. You have to disinfect your clippers.
Yes.
And cut them, because you
Okay.
can transmit disease from one plant to another.
Okay. All right.
But it is important to
Disinfect.
disinfect, to
Okay.
wear gloves if you need to.
Okay.
So yeah, that's what I'm looking at. I'm
Okay.
looking at the leaves, that they're not too spotty.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. What materials do you use when you plant them?
It really depends on the type of orchid that we're dealing with. For instance, Nancy brought some orchids here today that need some help.
Yes.
And so this is a great thing, because the majority of the orchids that people have look like this. Right now, this is trying to look for some moisture, for light, and this is normal. They do lose their
They
leaves.
do? Okay.
This is normal, but it's outgrowing this pot.
Okay.
So it needs to be taken out, all of the old media removed, and it will change completely when you put the proper medium to it.
Okay.
So they will reward you with beautiful
Flowers.
flowers. So if it looks beautiful like that, imagine if you put the right orchids. Now,
Okay.
this orchid right now is growing this way too, because in nature, to avoid getting crown rot and all the water accumulated in the center, they drain like that.
Right.
In nature, they grow like
right,
that.
and they drain.
And yes.
Just because we've got so much to cover, I know when you're talking about the watering, you said you water yours with a hose.
Because I have so many.
You have so many. But I mean, people can, if they have them, water them with a hose.
Right.
And
But
we're going to dispel the using ice cubes. Let's get that right off the table. Don't
no
use
more,
ice
no more
cubes to
ice
water your-
cubes.
okay.
No, I
All right.
imagine that.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what about light and circulation and all
That-
of those things, Martha?
Those are key. Those are key. For instance, this orchid is a type that doesn't need a lot of light. So they can grow indoors, and that's why people love them, because they can have them inside the house. And instead of buying cut flowers that last maybe a week, you're going to have an orchid that this can last you 2, 3, 4 months.
It does. I know. It's
Or
amazing.
longer than that.
It's
So
amazing.
you pay what, $30, $40 for
Yep.
a pretty orchid,
Yep.
and you have 4 months of enjoyment.
Of enjoyment, right. Okay.
So
So, again, so it depends on the particular orchid. Let me take that.
right.
from you.
One more thing about this
Okay.
orchid. This is causing a lot of stress, and it is holding somehow a little bit these heavy blooms. But if you put a taller stake,
Yes.
like maybe this one here,
Yes.
and lift it up a little bit more,
Lovely.
we can work on that more later,
Okay.
but I just want to give you the idea.
Yes.
It just lifts it up and it reduces the stress on the
I
plant.
snap it before. So
Now,
there we go.
this
Okay.
plant right here
Uh-huh.
is amazing, and most people get this type of plants when for a wedding, anniversary, birthday, graduation. And there's a lot of plants all beautifully put together in a bouquet like this, and I'm sure this was magnificent.
It was. But
Okay.
we've got to get that out of there, and we only have a couple minutes left. so.
It's done blooming. You need to check for the water. It's
Okay.
pretty wet.
Yeah.
They're crowded. They need to be removed. This one was having a baby. It's called a kiki in Hawaiian. And the roots are still healthy, but this needs to go.
Okay.
So we need to repot this
Help that.
immediately.
Okay.
There is different places to repot orchids, and I don't throw anything that is good that I can use. This was broken, and the fact that it was broken made me think about what can I use it for, and I put an orchid right here.
Okay.
Unfortunately, it's not blooming right now. It will,
How
and it will
about
be pretty.
how about feeding and fungicides and things? How often do you feed your plants?
The feeding is weekly.
Okay.
Every week I give them a fertilizer, and then the fungicides and insecticides once a month. And it depends. My orchids really don't have a lot of disease, knock on wood.
There you go.
And
Okay.
but I'm very attentive to them.
And how about watering? So you say you feed them once a week. So is it a granular or is it a liquid? Martha?
That's a very good question, because in March I use these little baskets. You can see them right here.
Yep.
And I will put some slow release fertilizer.
Uh-huh.
So when you water them year round, they're always releasing some kind of nutrients.
That's wonderful.
But then I like to boost them with a little bit of Epsom salts, calcium, magnesium, just to add more to the plant according to the
All right.
requirements.
And this is going to be the last one we have time to talk about. You can plant them on pretty much anything if you wire them to it, right?
Yes, you can mount them
Okay.
on beautiful pieces of wood.
And
you
hang
can
them
mount
outside.
them. This one, I hang it outside, and I have them
Yep.
with the vandas because the roots are exposed. This has a sphagnum moss, and this one is an orchid that blooms almost year round
That's
too.
beautiful.
So
Okay.
it is really beautiful.
So we're gonna wrap up with, I know you have a person that you know that sells orchids and will give you all of the information that they need, that the
yes,
person needs, and they're located in the farmers market.
Yeah, all around orchids, sells beautiful orchids at the farmer's market.
Okay.
And so whenever I have an impulse and I need to have a specialty orchid,
Yep.
not just what you find at Home Depot or
Yep.
the box stores,
Yes.
then I
Okay.
go to Elfie.
Elfie.
And
you
this
recommend
is
that book.
my Bible.
Okay.
It's for Florida. This was written in Miami, so you change it like 2 weeks later according to orchids month by month.
Okay.
And it will tell you
Great.
what to do with each orchid.
Marta, I wish we had more time, but I think we got a lot of good information out of there. So thank you so much for being here today.
Oh, you're quite welcome.
Up next, we'll explore a number of products that we need to keep our flowers and garden thriving. So don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. Ryan Tenuta, owner of Grow Goods, is going to share his expertise on the how-tos of successful gardening. Thank you for coming on the show. I think following up with the orchids is a nice fit, and our last guest will also be full of wonderful information about gardening and planting and things. But let's start with your business. How long have you been in business? And tell our viewers a little bit about you, Ryan.
Yeah, well, we've been online for several years now, and so in the last 6 months, we've opened our retail location here to try to help kind of help everybody with the specialty garden supplies that maybe you can't find at the big box or
Exactly.
other different garden centers. And so with this wide variety of plants that are out there,
Yeah.
you know, we try our best to get a little bit for everybody.
Yeah.
If they're going inside or outside, you know, we try to have products available for them,
Okay.
and also at any budget.
Well, and two, it's nice to have somebody to talk to instead of buying it online, and that was kind of what we were going with Marta. If you don't know how to do something, you can buy the materials, but you're there to help them. So let's start with planting vegetable gardens. When do people plant vegetable gardens? We're in Florida.
Yeah,
What's
we are, and it's we have several grow seasons here, so that's a nice advantage. The disadvantage to that, you know, obviously, is we have a lot more pests and things, but we can take care of those, and we'll talk about that later.
Okay.
But the best time to plant your gardens here in Florida, if you're growing your cooler weather crops such as broccoli, cauliflower, and your leafy greens, January, February, and again, I would say in October and November are the best times to plant. The fall season's generally a better one for the cooler weather crops. And then all your other vegetables, your peppers, tomatoes, and things, you can plant in March. And again, in August and September, depending on how the hurricanes are and the weather,
Yeah.
you might want to wait a little while to make sure you're not going to have anything disturbing your garden. And that's outside. Inside, you can always grow year-round. So that's the nice thing about bringing everything inside. You have a lot more control over everything, and so you can have a year-round garden that way.
And what would you plant inside?
You can pretty much grow anything
Yeah.
inside. It's just the larger the plant, obviously, the more space you would need, the more lighting you would have available. So your initial costs are a little bit higher.
Yeah.
But the best things I think to grow inside are your herbs, because you can have fresh herbs for
Sure.
cooking.
Yeah.
They don't take a lot of space. Very easy to grow.
And they don't have to be pollinated.
Correct. There's
Yeah, so that's-
no need for that, and in the controlled environment, you know, you can continually have something to harvest to eat, especially with like leafy greens and things like that. You can cut them, you can eat them, and then they'll just regrow back
Yeah.
for another time.
Okay. And that's where the hydroponics comes in too. That's my daughter's been getting so many salads out of her hydroponics. But but next up is pests. How do you control the pests and keep them from eating these delicious vegetables that you've grown?
It's a great question because it is a struggle here in Florida since our lovely climate definitely makes them take off. And then when you're inside, if you do happen to get pests inside, it's like a petri dish. So they just, without any treatment, they tend to take off and do a lot of harm to your garden. And so we have a lot of options on that. You have your organic options, your bioinsecticides that are generally oil-based. They can be plant-based or petroleum-based. And so those are very effective. They're spot killers. And so you need to spray the plant. But then we also have other ones that you could use that are more of the synthetic version, very effective. And depending on what you're planting or when you plant is the right time to use those. And that's something we can help you with.
Okay. So growing vegetables and herbs hydroponically. Yes. What's your thoughts on that?
They grow great hydroponically. Like I said, you can have year-round harvest. And then the different methods, there's ebb and flow, NFT. We could spend hours talking about that, but they're very simple. And
they're kits. So when you're saying those
Yes.
those initials, I'm not familiar with them. So they're kits that you can buy and kind of put together
There's
yourself.
pre-made kits with lighting that can fit on a tabletop.
Do you have those?
We do. We carry some smaller ones, the Sunblaster ones, and then we have other smaller systems that you can put together that maybe fit on a table this size to
That's
grow
nice.
a little bit more stuff.
Nice.
And so
Okay. Difference between compost, garden soil, and potting mix.
it's a great question. I think a lot of people get confused on the difference between those.
Yeah.
But compost is just organic material that's going to feed your plants in a natural manner. The garden soil, or planting soil, sometimes called, is for in-ground plantings. So when you're planting in the raised beds in your garden, that's what you would use that for.
Okay.
And then the potting mix is used in containers. And so
Okay.
lots of drainage. And so, depending on how you're planting is when you use different ones.
Okay. So really quickly before we go, how can I improve my garden and my lawn? Feed it?
Absolutely. Here is always, you're always going to need to fertilize during the different seasons. And then, taking some preventative measures, especially in your lawn, of spraying herbicides to make your lawn look beautiful. And then if you use organic components, you're going to build up the soil over time so that you use less fertilizer, hopefully you use less water, and just have a healthier garden.
And you're there to help your customers get all of that taken care of. So what's your website? And then we have to go, unfortunately.
Well, thanks for having me. Our website is growgoods.com. We have tons of products on there. And then we have probably 5 times as much available in the store. That I'm always there, and I can help you with starting your garden and doing anything and everything for plants.
Great. Thanks, Ryan. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Well, we hope you enjoyed the show today, and thank you for joining us on Suncoast FYI. If you would like to promote your nonprofit or community event, we would love to hear from you, and this is a complimentary service. Please call or email us using the information on the screen. To view previous episodes, go to snntv.com and click on the What's On tab. I'm Nancy O'Neill, and we'll see you next week on Suncoast FYI.